Pull into your garage right now and look around. Maybe a car. Maybe some plastic bins stacked against the wall. Maybe nothing at all, just space, clean and empty, organized by nobody in particular. The American garage in the 1970s was nothing like this. It was a working room. It had a smell the moment you opened the door. It had a temperature that was always slightly different from the rest of the house. It had a particular kind of organized chaos that every dad in every neighborhood understood instinctively. Walk in there, and you knew immediately. Someone used this place. Someone built things here. Someone fixed things here repeatedly over years, and the room remembered every one of them. These are 18 things every American garage had in the 1970s and that have almost completely disappeared. Maxwell House, Folgers, Hills Brothers. The brand did not matter because the can was no longer in the coffee business. The lid had been replaced with the original metal lid, pressed back on firmly, and a strip of masking tape across the front read in marker, short screws, or misc bolts, or simply nails. There were 6 of them on the shelf, maybe 8. Each one a different size of can, the large 39-ounce can for nails and lag screws, the smaller 11-ounce cans for wire nuts and wall anchors, and the small brass screws that came with hinges. The system was not complicated. When a project produced leftover hardware, the hardware went into the appropriate can. When a project required small hardware, you checked the cans first before driving to the hardware store. Rattle 1. The sound of screws in a metal coffee can is so specific, so immediately recognizable to anyone who ever reached into one, that it almost functions as a time machine. The metal-on-metal rattle, the smell of old coffee underneath the smell of machine oil, the slight graininess of metal shavings at the bottom that had sifted down through everything else over years of use. The coffee can worked because it was the right size, free, clearly visible, and durable. When the hardware store needed a container, the garage had one already. Plastic bin organizers replaced them, labeled, stackable, designed specifically for hardware storage. They are better in every organizational sense and less satisfying in every other sense. And deeper in the garage, hanging from the pegboard or leaning against the wall, was a tool that the coffee cans were organizing hardware for, one of the oldest tools in the building. Number 17, the brace and bit, U-shaped, heavy. The top handle fit in the palm and rotated freely while the frame swept in a wide arc around it. That crank motion translated physical effort directly into rotational force at the bit. No motor, no battery, no cord. Just the mechanics of a lever moving in a circle, which is one of the oldest force-multiplying ideas in human history. The brace and bit was in most garages in the 1970s, not because power drills did not exist. They did. But because the brace and bit was already there and it still worked perfectly. And there was no compelling reason to get rid of it. It had been in the garage since the 1950s, or it had come from the father's garage before that. It hung on the pegboard and it drilled holes whenever it was needed quietly without needing to be plugged in or charged or have its bits changed with a key chuck. Pick one up and use it. The sweep of the frame requires space. You need room to move your arm in a full arc, but the force it generates is considerable, and the control it offers is something power drills approach but do not quite match. You can feel the grain of the wood through the tool. You can feel when the bit is cutting cleanly and when it is binding. The feedback is immediate and physical in a way a machine does not. The cordless drill made the brace and bit feel obsolete before it was actually obsolete. The brace still drills holes. It still works in any condition, in any location, without needing to be charged. It is slower. It is also the tool you reach for when the drill battery is dead and the charger is in the house and you need one hole drilled right now. Right next to it, available for the same reason, was something that accumulated without anyone quite planning it. Number 16. The jar of mixed, mismatched screwdrivers. Not a set. Never a set. Or rather a set once, long ago, in a plastic case, but the case was lost, and the screwdrivers were not, so they ended up in the jar. A wide-mouthed glass jar or a metal canister bristling with handles, red rubber, black rubber, wooden handles gone smooth with use, and one yellow handle from a set nobody remembered buying. Flatheads in 3 sizes. 4 Phillips, because Phillips screwdrivers disappeared regularly and were replaced, and then the originals reappeared. 1 square drive. One that nobody was quite sure about, possibly metric, kept on the theory that someday its purpose would become clear. The jar held all of them without judgment. You grabbed the jar, looked in, and took the one you needed. You put it back when you were done, or you set it on the bench and put it back later, or you carried it inside for something and it came back eventually. The system tolerated this. A drawer with a divided organizer does not. A missing screwdriver leaves a visible gap, which creates a small anxiety. The jar absorbed chaos without complaint. The handle of a real screwdriver from the 1970s has a weight and a grip that modern screwdrivers with their ergonomic handles have not improved upon as much as they think. The rubber was thick and slightly textured. The shaft was steel through to the tip, and the whole tool had a solidity that told you it would outlast the person using it. Most of them did. Outside, in the driveway or the backyard, was a machine that several of those screwdrivers had been used to maintain. It stood in the corner near the gas mower, or sometimes instead of the gas mower in garages where the lawn was small enough and the person patient enough. This was a real mower. Thin wheels, a rotating cylinder of blades set at a slight angle. No engine, no fuel cap, no pull cord. You pushed it and it cut. The mechanics of the real mower are elegant. Forward motion through the grass turns the cylinder through a simple gear connection to the wheels. The rotating blades pass against a fixed bed knife at the bottom, and the grass is cut the way scissors cut, by 2 edges meeting, not by a single edge hitting at high speed. The cut is cleaner. The sound is quieter. The smell is grass without exhaust. On a flat lawn on a dry morning, a push-reel mower is a genuine pleasure to use. The resistance is light, the sound is the clean snipping of blades. The lines left in the grass are precise. You are the engine, which means the pace is yours. The effort is yours, and the satisfaction at the end is entirely yours in a way that a gas mower's satisfaction is not. They faded because lawns got larger, gas mowers got cheaper and more powerful, and the effort required for a real mower on anything other than a small flat lawn became genuinely prohibitive. These are real reasons. The real mower did not disappear because it failed. It simply disappeared because the scale of what it was asked to do changed. And on the shelf beside the mower of whatever kind, there was always one more item that the garage could not function without. The WD-40 first, a blue and yellow can, straw taped to the side. The smell announced itself the moment the cap came off. Sharp, petroleum bright, the specific chemical smell of a product that has been exactly the same since 1953. You used it on the hinge that squeaked, on the bolt that would not turn, on the chain that had gone stiff over winter, on the lock that had gotten wet and was now arguing with the key. The straw was the detail, the thin red straw that you inserted into the nozzle and held there with a thumb while you sprayed, directing the stream into exactly the gap that needed it. The straw was always slightly bent from previous uses. It always worked anyway. The oil rag beside it was its partner. Not a paper towel, a rag. A piece of cotton that had been cut from an old shirt or bought in a bundle from the hardware store, used until it was saturated with oil, washed occasionally, returned to service. It wiped. It polished. It applied oil to surfaces that needed a thin coat. It cleaned up what the WD-40 loosened. It lived on a hook or on the corner of the workbench, stiff enough to stand slightly on its own, with a texture that told its whole history. The paper shop towel replaced the oil rag gradually, more sanitary, more convenient, disposable. This was not a loss in any practical sense. But the oil rag was an object with a relationship to its work. It had been places. It had a patina. The shop towel has none of this, which is fine and slightly less. That same attention to preparation carried through every corner of the 1970s garage. In Chapter 2, it takes us from the seasonal rituals to the tools that assumed the most knowledge, and finally to the thing that made all of it make sense. Number 13. The snow tire set on steel rims. 4 tires stacked against the wall, the steel rims oxidizing at the edges, swapped in every November and taken off every April. They were not taken to a dealer. They were swapped in the driveway with a floor jack and a torque wrench by the person who owned the car. The steel rims were the key. Cheap enough to own a second set, simple enough to mount yourself, durable enough to last the life of the car. You bought the snow tires once, put them on their own rims, and the seasonal changeover became a 2-hour ritual that cost nothing but time. The tires lived in the garage all summer, stacked in the corner, slightly in the way, exactly where they were supposed to be. All-season tires reduced the need. Alloy rims made a second set expensive. Tire storage services absorbed what remained. The stack disappeared from the garage wall, and with it the particular satisfaction of being ready for winter before winter arrived. Metal tank, pump handle on top, brass nozzle on a wand. You pumped it to build pressure, squeezed the trigger, and adjusted the nozzle between stream and mist. It handled pesticides, weed killer, fertilizer, water, whatever the yard needed that week. The pump resistance told you when pressure was right. The brass nozzle lasted decades. The whole tool required nothing but effort and the occasional replacement of a rubber seal that cost 30 cents at the hardware store. Ready-to-use spray bottles replaced it for most jobs. Battery-powered sprayers replaced it for the rest. Neither asks anything of you, which is convenient and which also means you use them without quite thinking about what you are spraying or where it is going. The hand sprayer's small friction produced more careful use. That's not nothing. A row of them on a rod or a section of pegboard, 2-inch to 12-inch cast iron, cold and heavy. One clamp is never enough. Garages in the 1970s had them in sets because gluing, welding, and bending all require things to stay together while something else happens. The spin of the adjustment handle, the weight of cast iron settling into a grip, the satisfying resistance when the screw hit the work. Quick-release bar clamps replaced them for most woodworking. Faster, lighter, easier to operate one-handed. The C-clamp required patience in 2 hands and deliberate adjustment, which slowed the project down just enough to make you do it right. Some things are worth being slow about. Number 10. The hand saw. Full length, hanging flat against the wall, teeth still sharp if the garage was a good one. A crosscut saw that predated the circular saw in most households and stayed long after, because it needed no power, no extension cord, no blade guard, and no setup. You picked it up and you cut. The rasp of the blade through wood. The sawdust falling in a clean line. The ache in the shoulder after a long cut that told you exactly how much work you had done. A hand saw is slower than a power saw. The cut is also more honest. You feel every inch of it, and when you are done, you know you did it yourself in the most literal possible sense. The circular saw replaced it for speed. The hand saw stayed in the corner for everything else. Number 9. The contact cement. Flat round can, brush built into the lid, sitting on the shelf beside the WD-40. When the lid came off, the smell hit you immediately. Sharp, chemical, the specific solvent smell of a product that meant business. The garage held that smell for an hour after you finished. You brushed it on both surfaces, waited for it to go tacky, and pressed them together. The bond was instant and permanent. It fixed shoes. It reattached trim. It sealed gaskets. It bonded rubber to metal, leather to wood, laminate to plywood, surfaces that nothing else would hold. Safer water-based adhesives replaced it. They work. They do not announce themselves the moment the lid comes off, which is either an improvement or a loss depending on your relationship to that smell. In the 1970s garage, the smell of contact cement meant something was being repaired rather than replaced. That distinction mattered more than it does now. Number 8. The hydraulic floor jack and jack stands. Low-profile jack on the concrete, 2 steel stands beside it, a creeper folded against the wall. This was the home mechanic's complete undercar kit, and it assumed that the car was yours to work on, not just to drive. Lifts. Holds. That distinction was understood by everyone who used them. Working under a car supported only by a jack is how people got hurt, and the stands were the margin between competence and carelessness. You pumped the jack handle, watched the car rise, slid the stands under the frame, and lowered the car onto them. Then you got on the creeper and went under. The modern car's sealed components and specialized systems made the home oil change feel unnecessary before they made it nearly impossible. The jack and stands are still in some garages. The knowledge of how and when to use them is rarer. Number 7. The timing light. Pistol-shaped, with a strobe at the end, and a clamp that attached to the number 1 spark plug wire. You pointed it at the timing marks on the engine while it idled, and the strobe froze the rotating marks so you could read them and adjust the distributor until they aligned. The clicking of the engine at idle. The strobe flash turning motion into stillness. The smell of a warm engine in a closed garage on a Saturday morning. Incorrect ignition timing meant poor performance, poor fuel economy, and potential engine damage. The timing light let you find it and fix it yourself in the driveway, in an hour. Electronic ignition and computer-controlled timing made manual adjustment first unnecessary and then impossible. The timing light became a relic of a mechanical era. It was a tool for a window into the engine that modern cars have permanently closed. Number 6. The trouble light with the wire cage. A bare bulb in a wire cage on a long orange extension cord. You hung it from the hood, hooked it under the dash, draped it over the engine, carried it under the car on the creeper. It went wherever you needed light, and it stayed there without complaint. The cage was the point. A bare bulb breaks against concrete. A caged bulb survives being knocked against engine components for 30 years. The wire gets hot and smells faintly of itself, and the whole thing is indestructible in a way that feels almost aggressive. LED work lights replaced it. Brighter, cooler, safer, battery-powered. And balanced to stand on their own. Better in every technical sense. The trouble light had character that the LED lacks. The warmth of the incandescent bulb, the weight of the cage, the orange cord that snaked through every corner of every project. Character is not nothing. Number 5. The baby food jar of leftover paint. A row of small glass jars on the high shelf, Gerber and beechnut mostly, repurposed the moment the baby moved to solid food. Each one held a small amount of paint, clearly visible through the glass, labeled in marker. Living room, 1971. Hallway tan, kids' room blue. When the wall needed a touch-up, you went to the shelf. The jar was right there. The color matched exactly because it was the same paint. You opened the lid, stirred it with a screwdriver, dabbed it on, and walked away. The skin of dried paint floating on the surface. The smell when the lid came off after 2 years. The moment of relief when the touch-up disappeared into the wall. Digital color matching replaced the jar. You can go to any hardware store now and have any color reproduced from a chip. It's more accurate and more convenient and requires you to keep nothing. The paint jar shelf was also a record of decisions made, of rooms as they once were, of years written in masking tape and marker. That record is gone now, and the shelf holds something else. Number 4, the garage junk drawer. Wide and shallow, tucked into the workbench or a cabinet beside it. Impossible to close completely. Rubber bands, wire nuts in 3 sizes, spare fuses, old keys for locks that no longer existed, a tire gauge, a box cutter with a dull blade, mystery parts from things disassembled years ago. You knew it was chaos. You also knew where everything was, approximately, which was usually enough. When you needed a wire nut at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, you opened the drawer and found one in 40 seconds. The labeled plastic bin organizer requires you to know what you are looking for. The junk drawer did not. It just held things, and things were there when you needed them. It faded when the garage became organized in the modern sense, with systems, bins, labels, a place for everything. Tidier. It was also slightly less useful when the thing you needed did not fit a category yet. A kid's bike, usually. Slightly too small now. Outgrown but not discarded. Lifted to the rafters on 2 hooks and left there. Not stored exactly. Suspended between still useful and not quite ready to let go. It swung slightly when you bumped it. The hooks creaked under the weight. The rubber smell of old tires drifted down on warm afternoons. Nobody threw away a bike that still worked. It might be needed again. A younger kid might want it. A neighbor might ask. The rafter bike was optimism in object form, the belief that something still had use ahead of it, even if the current use had ended. When garages filled with other things and bicycles became cheaper and more disposable, the rafter bike came down and didn't go back up. You walked in and it hit you before you saw anything. Gasoline and motor oil and sawdust and rubber and something metallic and something wooden and something that had no name, because it was all of those things together, layered over years until they became one single thing. The smell of a garage that was used. It told you everything. Not just that someone parked a car here, someone worked here, fixed things here, built things here, came here on Saturday mornings with a problem, and left in the afternoon with it solved. The smell requires the work. Sealed epoxy floors, clean storage systems, and parking-only garages do not produce it. When the work stopped, the smell stopped with it. If you know exactly what smell this is, you do not need it described further. If you do not know it, there is no description that quite gets there. It was specific to a time and a way of living that produced it, and it is gone from most garages now completely. Number 1, the guy who knew how to fix everything. Not a professional. Just someone who had learned over time how things worked. The car, the house, the lawnmower, the washing machine. Someone who looked at a broken thing and thought, I can probably figure this out, and then figured it out. He was in the driveway on Saturday mornings, at the workbench on Sunday afternoons, on the creeper under the car when something sounded wrong. He used every tool on this list, kept every spare part, filled every coffee can, built the bench, traced the outlines on the pegboard. The garage existed because he existed. The tools had meaning because someone used them with knowledge and intention. The oil stain on the floor was his. The bent antenna on the radio was his. The half-empty can of contact cement on the shelf was his. He faded for real reasons. Cars became too complex to work on at home. Houses required licensed specialists for most systems. The economics shifted. It became cheaper to hire someone than to own the tools. These changes were not all losses, but something specific went with them. The assumption that you could figure it out. That the things you owned were yours to understand, not just to use. That a broken thing was a problem to solve, not a reason to buy a new one. The 1970s garage was built around that assumption. Every tool on the pegboard, every spare part on the shelf, every coffee can of hardware, every oil stain on the floor, all of it existed in service of a person who believed that understanding how things worked was part of what it meant to own them. When that belief changed, the garage changed with it. The smell left. The workbench came down. The pegboard wall was painted over. And what remained was a clean, empty room, perfectly organized, waiting for a car.